As they're taking Tamar out, she sends a message to Judah, sending along his seal and his cord, his own identification, the very marks of who he is. And she says, the owner of these is whose child I carry. When Tamar pulls out Judah's items, she has one word for him. She says, recognize? You recognize? And she's not just saying, do you recognize this staff or these clothes? Do you recognize who you are? Do you recognize who you've become? Do you recognize what you're doing? Can you now recognize your depravity and the depth of your baseless hatred? Can you recognize your hypocrisy? This is the climax of the story is Tamar saying to her oppressor, do you recognize who you've become? Tamar is avenged, and she's restored. And Judah is awakened to his depths of his depravity by the very one he sought to deprive. Judah responds in verse 26. In the NIV that we read, it says, she is more righteous than I. But it's just not a clear translation, actually. Most scholars would agree that a clearer translation is, she is righteous, not I. She is righteous, I am not. Righteous becomes the defining word for Tamar. Not widow, not prostitute, not any other word, but it is righteous. In Hebrew, it's the word sadak, which is also the word for just. It is a judicial word. Judah is saying that she is just. She has justice on her side, not mine. The story would conclude with Tamar giving birth to two twin sons, whose names mean brightness and breakthrough. Brightness, breaking through. Tamar would be celebrated and honored as the righteous and just one throughout Scripture. In the story of Ruth, which we'll hear later in the series, Ruth and Boaz, they're being blessed by a priest, and the priest says, may your family be like that of Perez, be like that of breakthrough, whom Tamar bore to Judah. King David and his son Absalom, they would both name their daughters Tamar in honor of the woman who is righteous and just. And of course, Matthew names Tamar in his royal genealogy of Jesus. But what does all this have to do with Christmas? How does this connect to Advent? In Advent, we anticipate the arrival of the one who would usher in our rescue. The one who would know us better than we could possibly know ourselves. In Jesus, we find the one who says to us, recognize. Recognize me and recognize who you are and who you've become and recognize who you can be.